As the sun enters Virgo, we move from the broad expression of Leo into a much more discerning kind of awareness. And with Mercury, the nodes, Uranus, the moon, and several other bodies woven into this pattern, this isn't simply about getting organized. It's about noticing what matters enough to give our attention to and what may be ready to be refined, released, or reorientated. Hey there, this is Jojo from 7th Plane Healings and astrojo.com with your Astrosonics, where we go on a cosmic sound journey together. And welcome to Astrosonics, and this is where astrology, sound, and intention come together to explore the energy of the cosmos through planetary frequencies. And each week we'll explore astrology, the astrology of the moment, and not just to understand what's happening in the sky, but to experience these archetypal energies through the resonance of planetary tuning forks. And today we're exploring the sun entering Virgo on the 23rd of August at 12:18 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And our focal planet is, of course, the sun, and it's representing vitality, identity, and the way we bring ourselves into the world. And as the sun moves into Virgo, our attention can begin to shift towards discernment, refinement, practical awareness, and the little things that help the larger picture actually work. And so with this particular ingress, we have the Sun, Mercury, and South Node conjunction. And the Sun also is in opposition to the North Node. And so then there's also a square to Uranus and a beautiful collection of flowing aspects involving Chiron, Vesta, Pallas Athena, Ceres, Mars, and the Moon. And a much more subtle group of inconjuncts involving Neptune, Pluto, and Juno. So there is quite a lot happening here. But before we begin, if you'd like to experience your own personal Astrosonics tune-up, you'll find details below. And each one comes with a custom planetary sound bath, an in-depth astrological report, practical guidance based on your own birth chart, solar return chart, or your current transits, depends on which one you choose. And if you are enjoying these journeys, I'd love your support. If you just by liking, subscribing, and sharing this channel with anyone you think may be interested. And you can also listen on Spotify if you prefer to listen that way. And you also find out more about my coherence pendants, frequency imprinted pendants at 7thplanehealings.com. But the links are in the description if they resonate with you. And in this episode, we will be exploring, well, first we're going to look at the sun, the Virgo sun, and what it brings into focus, particularly through the sun's relationship with Mercury and the nodes. And then we'll have a look at the activating and flowing aspects, how they create a rather interesting balance between adjustments, movement, and support. Then we'll move into the astrology, from the astrology into the planetary tuning fork sound bath. It's giving you some space to experience these themes through sound rather than just simply thinking about them. So settle in. This one is embodied, clarifying, and attuned. And let's have a look at the astro breakdown. So we've got the sun entering Virgo, and it changes the quality of the solar awareness. The sun is our focal point here. So we're looking at what happens when our conscious attention moves into a sign traditionally associated with discernment, refinement, practical intelligence, craftsmanship, and the relationships between the small details and the larger whole. And the sun is in conjunct with Mercury, which is the ruling planet of Virgo, and it's also conjunct the South Node, which means it's opposing the North Node. So this creates a strong concentration around mind, identity, familiarity, direction, and conscious choice. So there can be something quite clarifying about this. The familiar becomes visible. So the way we think becomes visible. the habits of attention that we've developed become visible. And because the North Node sits in opposition to the Sun, there is also a sense of orientation. So not necessarily a command to abandon the past, but an opportunity to notice where familiarity ends and conscious growth begins. And then we also have the Sun in a square with Uranus. It's adding movement and unpredictability. And alongside that, there's a lovely network of flowing aspects to this Virgo Sun. And we also have a Yod pattern with the Sun as its focal planet. So it's adding another layer of adjustment and reorientation to the picture. So I don't see this as a sky that's simply saying get organized. It feels much more interesting than that. It's asking us to become more discerning about where our attention goes and what we carry forward and what we're actually willing to embody. We listen to the planets. We have Sun in a conjunction with Mercury. So the Sun represents conscious identity and awareness. Mercury represents thought, language, perception, information, and the way we make sense of our experience. And together they can be a concentration of mental and conscious awareness. There can be a quality here of bringing thought and identity into closer alignment. So it's not just thinking more for the sake of thinking, becoming clearer about what we actually mean, what we actually value, what are we actually prepared to put into practice. And what becomes clearer when we stop forcing clarity. We have the Sun in a conjunction with the South Node of the Moon. So I'm going to use the Moon here to represent the nodes. So the South Node brings us the territory of familiarity. The patterns we've developed, ways of being that are well rehearsed, things that we know how to do almost without thinking. And with the Sun sitting alongside the South Node, some of those familiar patterns may become more visible. It's not necessarily a negative thing. In fact, familiarity can contain enormous wisdom. The question is simply whether something is still alive for us, or whether we're continuing it just because we already know how to. So Virgo adds an interesting quality here, because discernment isn't about throwing everything away. It's about sorting, looking at what stays, and what changes, and what served its purpose, what still has integrity. There can be something very embodied about the way, about that process. We have the Sun opposite the North Node. Again, I'm going to use the Moon. So opposite the South Node sits the North Node. The Sun is also facing towards that direction, represented by the North Node. This creates a natural polarity between what is familiar and what's unfolding. So I don't think the invitation here is to reject the past. The South Node can hold experience, knowledge, and skills that we've already developed. But the North Node asks a different question. This is what happens when we move. What happens when we allow ourselves to move beyond what is already known? With the Sun involved, this can become a question of conscious participation. Where am I directing my attention? What am I choosing? What am I willing to grow into? And there can be a quiet tension between staying with what feels comfortable and responding to something that asks a little bit more of us. And perhaps Virgo gives us a practical way to work with that. So we don't have to know the entire path. Sometimes the next step simply is the next thing that becomes clear. And we have the Sun in a square with Uranus. Then Uranus enters the conversation. And suddenly our beautiful organised Virgo processes gets a little less predictable. So the Sun in a square with Uranus can bring activation, disruption, and a desire for greater freedom. So it can challenge the structures through which we've been accustomed to expressing ourselves. And that can be quite liberating. So the challenge is not necessarily the change itself. It can be the process of adjusting to the fact that our understanding has changed. So there's an interesting relationship here between Virgo's desire to refine and Uranus's desire to innovate. So one says, let's make this work better. Whilst the other says, perhaps we need to think differently about what better actually is. So that's a useful conversation. We can simply just let the old patterns and the new possibilities sit beside each other. And we have a Sun in trine with Chiron. So Chiron brings another quality altogether. It's where the Sun brings awareness. Chiron can symbolically bring attention towards places where our understanding has been shaped by experience. And with the trine, there is a quality of flow here. It's not necessarily that everything suddenly becomes easy, but that awareness can move more naturally towards understanding. And so refinement doesn't have to mean finding fault. We can become more precise without becoming harsher with ourselves. There's something lovely about that distinction. We have the Sun trining Vesta. So Vesta brings a symbolism of devotion, sacred attention, and what we tend to. So the Sun trining Vesta, there is a natural relationship between identity and devotion. And this feels particularly compatible with Virgo because Virgo understands that something meaningful is often built through small acts of attention. So not necessarily dramatic gestures, just returning again and again to what matters. And the tuning forks can mirror that quality beautifully. So one sound, one moment of listening, and then another, and a rhythm of attention. We have the Sun trining Pallas Athena. And Pallas Athena brings pattern recognition, strategy, wisdom, and the ability to see relationships between things. And with the Sun in Virgo, this feels like an invitation into intelligent discernment. So not just seeing the details, but seeing how the details belong together. And this is where Virgo's analytical quality can become something much more creative. As we aren't simply picking things apart, we're recognizing patterns, seeing the structure underneath what belongs where. And sometimes that kind of understanding arrives quietly. You just suddenly see the connection. So something that seemed fragmented becomes coherent. We have a Sun in sextile with Ceres. So Ceres brings nourishment, care, cycles, and the relationships between giving and receiving. And the Sun sextile Ceres offers a supportive relationship between conscious expression and care. And this is another place where the Virgo symbolism becomes important. So care can be incredibly practical. It can be about what we do every day. And perhaps this aspect invites us to consider whether the structures of our daily life actually support what we're trying to grow. And we have the Sun in a sextile with Mars. Mars brings movement, desire, initiative, and action. And the Sun gives conscious direction to that energy. With a sextile, it can be an available pathway between knowing and doing. And this is useful because Virgo can sometimes become very focused on refining the plan. And Mars reminds us that eventually something has to move. There's a difference between knowing what matters and actually putting energy behind it. So this relationship can feel like a gentle encouragement towards embodied action. So not rushing and not forcing, just taking the next meaningful step. We also have the Sun trining the Moon. So this is a beautiful symbolic relationship between conscious awareness and the inner emotional landscape. The Sun is saying, this is what I'm becoming aware of, The moon is saying, this is what I'm feeling and experiencing. And the trine creates a sense of flow between the two. So there can be less of a separation between what we know and what we feel. So less of a separation between the outer expression and the inner experience. So it doesn't mean that everything is perfectly harmonious. It simply suggests that awareness can move more naturally between these layers. And for our sound journey, this is a lovely place to pause. Because sound doesn't require us to explain what we're feeling, and we can simply listen. And then we have the Sun in an inconjunct with Neptune. Neptune brings imagination, sensitivity, permeability, ideals, and the less tangible dimensions of experience. So with the Sun in conjunct Neptune, there can be a subtle mismatch between clarity and what remains elusive. Virgo wants definition. Neptune doesn't always work that way. And perhaps the invitation is not to force one to become the other. There are things we can understand through precision. And then there's things that we understand through allowing ourselves to remain receptive. And then we have the Sun in conjunct Pluto. Pluto brings depth, transformation, power, and the processes that happen beneath the surface. And the Sun in conjunct with Pluto can symbolically ask us to adjust our relationships with control, identity, and deeper patterns. And again, I wouldn't read this as something dramatic that happens, that has to happen. It can be much more quieter. It's perhaps we notice where we're holding too tightly. Perhaps we recognize that an old way of defining ourselves that no longer quite fits. Or perhaps we just simply become more aware of the depths beneath something that initially looked very ordinary. And Virgo can bring attention to the small detail, while Pluto reminds us that sometimes the small detail contains the doorway into something much deeper. We have the Sun in conjunct Juno. So finally, Juno brings themes of commitment, partnerships, agreements, and the way that we relate, what we've chosen to stand beside. So with the Sun in conjunct Juno, there can be a subtle process of adjustments between who we are and becoming what we've become committed to. So that can apply to relationships, certainly, but also to commitments that we've made to ourselves. So again, this doesn't need to become a dramatic relationship story. It can just be a quiet inner conversation. And we have the Yod pattern. Now this is a specific pattern made by aspects with planets. And in this case, we've got the Sun as a focal point and There's two inconjuncts coming off the sun, and this focuses those three planets that are inconjunct into the sun, and it just really focuses that energy much more. So with the sun as the focal point, and Pluto and Juno, and also Neptune, like Neptune forms one arm, Pluto and Juno are conjunct, forming the other arm, feeding into the sun. And so rather than looking at these inconjuncts as three separate subtle aspects, we can see them as part of one larger pattern. So Neptune brings the less tangible things. It brings sensitivity, imagination, ideals, intuition, and sometimes uncertainty about what we're actually seeing. And Pluto brings us deeper. It brings us deeper. It has a relationship with transformation, underlying patterns, power, and the things that are changing beneath the surface. Juno brings questions of commitment, agreements, and what we're choosing to remain connected to. So all three of these threads converge on the sun. And the sun's entering Virgo, a sign associated with discernment, refinement, and practical awareness, and the ability to distinguish what is useful and what is meaningful, and what actually belongs with us, what we want to hang on to. So the sun becomes this kind of focal point where all of the different currents are asking to be integrated. So what is real? What is imagined? So what's changing beneath the surface, and what have I committed myself to? Does the way I'm living actually reflect what I say matters? It feels more like a process of recalibration, where different parts of our inner landscape may not immediately fit together. And the invitation is to find a new way of bringing them into coherence. So let's take the insight, the uncertainty, the deeper knowing, the commitments, and gradually bring them into something that we can actually embody. So let's align with these planetary frequencies. I invite you to join me on this sacred sound journey. It's allowing your mind and your body to attune to these cosmic frequencies. Take a deep breath in and release. Take another deep breath. Just letting go, bringing your awareness to your heart and softening into deep relaxation as you bathe in the frequencies of the spheres. And our affirmation is: I step into coherent focus, steadying my heart as I embody what matters. I step into coherent focus, steadying my heart as I embody what matters. just take a moment to integrate these planetary energies, feeling balance and harmony within. Thank you for sharing this astrosonics journey with me. If you'd like to explore your own astrological sound healing, I offer personalized astrosonics tune-ups created from your unique birth chart, solar return, or your current transits. Each tune-up includes your own personalized planetary sound bath, so a detailed astrological interpretation, and a practical guidance to how you can work consciously with the energies present in your chart. You'll also receive a professionally prepared astrological report, your personalized chart, and integration resources to support your journey. And if you have been curious about my Attune Coherence pendant, it's you'll find details below, seventhplanehealings.com. Lots of forks here. I'm going to show you some of the pendants. I have 3 colors. One's gold. And I'm having trouble getting them to actually focus. Eventually I'll figure it out. So that's the gold. It's got a copper bifilar coil hand wound to the length of the sacred cubit. It's also imprinted with frequencies using a Rife machine and scalar field. That's also got holographic material, which is where I imprint frequencies to, as well as onto the copper coil. And then we also have the silver. So the different colors. It's a silver. Also with the holographic vinyl in the back. So every pendant's personally infused with a theta healing download as well, comes with it. And so whether you're here for the astrology, the sound, or simply a few moments of stillness, just thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. And if you've enjoyed this astrosonics experience, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed, shared it with someone who may benefit from it, or just leave a comment letting me know how you experienced today's planetary frequencies. You can also listen on Spotify. I have a version on Spotify, so you might want to just listen to the audio as you're driving, maybe not driving, meditating, where you don't want the visual or worry about YouTube cutting in and out. So tune into the universe together.